Greetings there lads and lasses. The Far Cry games are an open world action adventure series from Ubisoft, which usually focuses on an individual being trapped in a region of land and forced to fight for survival, whether it be an island, an obscure country, or a third world shithole.
Got him!
The game puts a focus on acquiring new weapons and perks, upgrading yourself from a naive survivor to an unhinged maniac that can liberate sections of the map and destroy legions of soldiers, someone that's so hopped up on drugs that they can unironically win fist fights with bears.
Darkness, my old friend.
The plot and motivations of the main character vary from game to game, but the gist of it is that the main character gets into a situation that ends with them being hunted by the current region's government. They end up helping a resistance group, and then you become a skilled warrior and liberate the region, overthrowing the main villain, and then the story ends. While the games do have some mystical elements and humorous moments to them, they are mostly serious in tone, being grim and gritty survival stories set in the modern day that shows what happens when sanity is pushed to the limit. Having to endure the horrors of warfare and bearing the weight of the choices and sacrifices that happen along the way.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
But after Far Cry 3, they started to do some more adventurous DLC and spin-offs, themes and stories that the general audience might not be expecting from the series, starting with the legendary Far Cry Blood Dragon. Far Cry Blood Dragon is what happens when you take bits and pieces from the Far Cry 3 map, put it through a futuristic neon blender, give it the story of every 80s action movie ever, and insert glowing lasers shooting dinosaur dragons. I love everything about this spin-off. The metallic synthwave music, the cheesy plot and dialogue, the art style, everything about this game is refined down to be everything the designers wanted. It has nowhere near as many missions, weapons and characters as Far Cry 3, but it doesn't need it. Every mission is designed to be different from the previous one. The less weapons mean there's more emphasis and care put into the upgrades for them, and there doesn't need to be that many characters because they're not really designed to have full personalities, just to be caricatures and stereotypes of characters because the plot is just there to push people to the next fight. Most of the enemies, wildlife, animations and gameplay is just copy and pasted from Far Cry 3. Just as I said, it's refined down to be the peak Far Cry experience. Everything's the same, except, of course, for the titular Blood Dragons. Blood Dragons are a brand new enemy, with the main plot focusing on them, and they are a force to be reckoned with. The main advantage you have on them is that they have poor eyesight, so as long as you stay down and away from them you should be fine until you're strong enough to take them on. If they spot you, however, you best be prepared for a fight. They have a boatload of health, can close the distance quite quickly, and if they can't close the distance on you, they'll just laser eye you to death, with their only weakness being their chest. They're quite a menace to you, even during the late game, but they're still classed as wildlife, which means it's very funny to let them into bases and to let them feast on all the cyber soldiers you have to fight. So yes, Far Cry Blood Dragon, very memorable, very good, would highly recommend. It's available on backwards compatibility for the Xbox, but I do believe they remastered it for the newer generation of consoles when Far Cry 6 got released, so I'm sure you could buy it there. Now we move on to Far Cry 4. Now while there is some trippy stuff in the game, this is due to the mysticism of the setting, and as such I'm not classing any of the Vision Quest missions that weird. What I am classing as weird is the fact that they then, as DLC, decided to make a expansion pack where RJ Gale goes into the mountains to fight Yetis. During the DLC, you'll be fighting both pagan Ming soldiers and against a group of religious cultists who seek to bring captives to a sacred relic and to sacrifice them to receive the blessing of becoming a Yeti. During the start of the DLC, you'll reach a relay station, and you'll be alternating between fighting off waves of cultists at the relay station and doing missions to fight against them. And all the while you'll have plenty of opportunities to fight Yetis. Honestly, there isn't that much to this DLC, all they've really added to the game is a new enemy type, but it's still such a strange thing to just introduce into the main story. And then, after this, the team decided that this first-person shooter game would greatly benefit being set back a few thousand years to when cavemen were knocking about. Far Cry Primal took the gameplay style from the Far Cry 4 Vision quests and decided to put the caveman skin on it and make an entire game about it. In this game you play as a caveman who's seeking a new place to live, and you end up fighting against other tribes seeking the land for themselves, as well as other creatures such as bears, wolves and saber-toothed tigers, which you can tame and keep as attack dogs. Honestly, it's just a very confusing jumping off point for the typical Far Cry game, with a primary focus on melee combat, no vehicles to ride, and none of the languages featured in the game are real languages, instead being new languages created for the game for different tribes, which I think is a nice touch when they could have just made everyone speak broken English. Honestly, despite the fact that the game runs fine and there was clearly a lot of effort put into making this look as prehistoric as possible, the game isn't a good Far Cry game. It's an okay game, but it's not a good Far Cry game. They took gameplay that is built around stealth and long range gunfights and then tried to make it about running up to people and clubbing them on the head. Running around and taming all the beasts in the game can also be very tedious, especially when you have to fight the same beast multiple times. And if you're someone who doesn't read subtitles and prefers to have them off, you'll have no idea what the plot of this game is. It's usually on sale quite often, so if you see it and it's less than a tenner, maybe consider trying it out. You'll definitely get 20 hours of gameplay out of it at least. And like I said, it is a good sort of game, it's just not a very good Far Cry game. So now we move on to Far Cry 5. Now again, Far Cry 5 had some mystical elements to it, but for the most part it was a gritty and brutal story. The DLC, however, that's completely different. The DLC for Far Cry 5 has a variety of different settings and gameplay that are basically completely unrelated to the main game, with all of them being really bizarre in their own way. The first of the DLC, Hours of Darkness, revolves around the Vietnam War, where you play as an American soldier who's shot down in a Vietnamese jungle and has to fight his way through the valley to get to the evac chopper. During your journey, you can kill several Vietnamese officers, destroy anti-aircraft guns, and rescue prisoners of war in order to earn yourself rewards and companions to help you on your journey to the evac point. Or, if you want, you can just one-man army your way through the villages and huts until you reach the evac site, after which you fight off a wave of Vietnamese soldiers until the chopper picks you up. Honestly, it's alright. It's got a decent amount of playtime depending on if you explore the whole map. There's no vendors or buyable perks, meaning you need to find weapons as you go and get stealth kills to unlock perks. And there's a lot of environmental storytelling that really adds a sense that this is a real war. To be honest, out of the 3 DLCs, this is an idea that could be expanded upon and made into its own game, but instead it's just a DLC for some reason. Then we move on to the second DLC for Far Cry 5, Lost on Mars. And not only will I say that this is the worst of the DLCs, but out of all of the DLCs and spin-offs in the entire Far Cry franchise, this is definitely the one I have no interest in replaying. The DLC involves Nick, Rye and Herc getting kidnapped from Earth by an alien force and recruited to fight a group of alien bugs that threaten Earth. Your goals are to help to find Herc's missing body parts, as he has been reduced to just a head, and you need to help restore the AI on Mars so that she can help fight the aliens and send you home. Now, considering the only new characters in this story are a really dumb alien group that don't really do anything intelligent and a super advanced AI, I'll let your brain figure out which one is actually the bad guy in this story, but it's really not a twist you'd see. Honestly, this DLC is just not enjoyable at all. You know how I said that Primal isn't amazing, but you could get a decent amount of playtime from it and you should maybe buy it if it's on sale? Don't buy this DLC, at all, ever. The story is bland, Herc is annoying as ever, and you have to spend the entire DLC with him. The gameplay isn't fun, it takes forever for your guns to actually feel effective, the bug enemies are more tedious than challenging, and you basically can't touch the floor because then you'll just be fighting enemies constantly. The DLC gives an occasional laugh, but most of the time the humour is just really bad, the gameplay sucks and the story just isn't interesting or fun enough to carry it to the end. I finished this DLC out of a sense of obligation and because I hate wasting money, not because I wanted to play it. Which brings us on to the final DLC, Dead Living Zombies, which does make sense from a narrative standpoint, with each mission in the DLC being movie scripts that Guy Marvel, the director shooting the Blood Dragon movie in the main game, is pitching to various producers in order to make films. From a gameplay standpoint, however, the DLC as a whole is just plain weird, focusing on fighting hordes of zombies and zombie bosses throughout a variety of different set pieces, from farms to skyscraper rooftops to secret underground lairs. Each mission changes what type of zombies you can encounter and what weapons you'll have available to you, and because the missions are supposed to be movie scripts that Guy is pitching to producers, sometimes part of the missions just change right in front of you as Guy rewrites the script to try and please the directors, which I think is a cool gimmick. You can also play in score mode, which will slightly change the maps and turn it into a more wave-based mission for you to try and earn points on. You can also play this in solo mode or co-op if you and a buddy want to fight zombies together. Overall, I think this is decent. Yeah, it's not massively complex, you're basically just fighting reskinned melee mooks from the base game, but it's always fun to shoot zombies, and the commentary from Guy constantly fucking up his scripts and trying to suck up the producers provides a lot of entertainment to keep going, just because you really want to see what his next dumb idea is. So yeah, that's the Far Cry 5 DLC. With all of them being weird additions to the main game in their own way, it's just a shame that the Mars DLC was just so grating and stagnant. I mean, everyone's different, you might find some enjoyment in it, so maybe buy the season pass when it's on sale to get all of them cheaper, but the other two are a lot better than that one. Now, after Far Cry 5 decided to end with Hope County getting Hiroshimaed, the spin-off game, New Dawn, decided to make an actual sequel to it instead of just being a standalone game like the other two. It takes part of the map from Far Cry 5 and twists it to have a more apocalyptic vibe to it. Most of the map is overgrown, there's destroyed and rusted cars and buildings all over the place, and there's a lot of mutated plants and animals dotted across the map. The game focuses on trying to rebuild what's left of Hope County and fight off a group of bandits called the Highwaymen. And it feels like a brighter, less harrowing version of Mad Max to me, being set in the post-apocalypse with crude architecture and an emphasis on ethanol vehicles. You can also go and do special missions that take you outside of Hope County, and you see how different parts of the world have been changed because of the apocalypse. There's also a new gameplay system introduced through the use of a magic apple from God. This is an actual plot point, by the way. It gives you special abilities, with the most bizarre one to me being the ability to double jump in the air, although there are other ones, such as the ones that let you hit harder or help you stay undetected from enemies better. The spin-off was a decent play for me. I don't like the new leveling system that was implemented into the game. It feels like it's a bit tedious and it kinda runs counter to the idea that you're slowly leveling up to become an unstoppable killing machine. And the two main villains are so cringy and forgettable that I really can't tell you anything noticeable about them, just that I hated listening to them. But overall I enjoyed it. It's a unique idea and I enjoy seeing how some of the characters and stories developed after Far Cry 5. Especially seeing Joseph Seed admit he was wrong and tries to be a good supporting character to the protagonist. And finally, there's Far Cry 6. Now, I'm going to be fully transparent here. I haven't played Far Cry 6 or gotten any of its DLC, because why the fuck am I gonna pay for this? But that doesn't mean I can't tell you about the weirdness of it. Now, the base game itself is already a bit weird because it's set after Far Cry 5, but the nuclear apocalypse isn't seen or mentioned at all in the game, so I have no idea if the end of Far Cry 5 was a hallucination and New Dawn is a what-if scenario, or if Far Cry 6 is set in an alternate universe. But either way, the DLC of the game is where it gets really weird. The initial season pass was set around 3 DLCs that focused on the 3 villains of Far Cry 3, 4 and 5. While you play as them as they're stuck in some sort of limbo, and they have to travel through this limbo and their memories to try and escape from it. To be honest, in terms of an overall plot, these DLCs are sort of lacking, but the main point of it is that these DLCs provide new perspectives to the characters and reveal their backstories and how they rose to power. There's a lot of good performances, and besides the main characters being voiced by their original voice actors, they also got some other voice actors back. And to be honest, it was really nice hearing Jason's voice again after a decade. The gameplay for these game modes is also different, as you earn currency by killing enemies and scavenging chests, and then using this to buy weapons and skills to make yourself stronger. You also have to go through different levels, with each level increasing the difficulty of the game, and completing the DLC on level 5 will give you a secret ending for each DLC. These DLCs don't really add much to the whole Far Cry narrative, but it does intrigue me from a narrative standpoint. Seeing these characters having to confront their demons and their past in order to try and survive through this limbo. And yeah, to be honest, once the game and the DLC goes on sale for a reasonable price, I will be willing to buy it and play it. But as I said, I haven't played the game, so I cannot recommend the game to you. Far Cry 6 also has a bunch of other DLC added onto it, like there's a Rambo one and a Stranger Things one, and there's also a new big DLC pack called Lost Between Worlds, which I don't even know what to do with that. It looks completely weird. But yeah, that's it for Far Cry 6. So yeah, these are the weird DLC and spin-offs that Far Cry have been producing for the past decade. Now usually there's a spin-off game between each numbered entry, so I would be curious to see if they bring anything out while we wait for Far Cry 7. However, considering that Ubisoft has been having budgetary things going on for the past few years, it wouldn't surprise me if they're just cutting costs and focusing purely on the main games. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you really enjoyed my content, please consider going to my Patreon or watching more of my videos. But overall, I hope you had a pleasant day and I hope to see you in the next video.